Howdy, y'all. Welcome to the EEARSS Podcast, produced by Terrier TV here at Titusville High School. My name is Frank. That is Bill. That is Cindy. That is Rachel. We are super excited to be chatting with literally a Chicago legend here in a second.
Yes, somebody that I cannot believe that I get a chance to talk to.
Yeah, this is literally awesome. So let's go ahead and introduce him. What do you say?
Yeah, let's
Today
do
on
it.
the podcast, we are joined by a Chicago legend, truly, Mr. Bill Kurtis. Bill, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you very much. Nice to be in the area of the Kennedy Space Center.
Yes, sir. Yeah, you're in the it's the heat down here right now. I don't know about in Chicago, but at least you're in 90-degree weather in this part of the world.
It is almost freezing here. I would be almost anywhere but here.
Yeah, I don't wish that Chicago cold on anybody. So, Bill, tell us a little bit about you. We know a little bit about you here on the podcast, but tell us about where you grew up and what the early days of Bill Kurtis were like.
Sure. I was born in Pensacola, Florida.
Wow.
My dad was an instructor there at the Naval Air Station, and it was and school. It was a year before World War II, so I was in the last year of the Depression and the first year of the war, and my life was shaped after that. He stuck around as an instructor, and then gradually over 4 years, he went to Okinawa and put his time in there. Meantime, I was shipped back to Kansas, where my mother's parents were. So in many ways, I grew up on a farm. And the farm was Kansas in 1940 and 41. So it would, and I don't remember that much, only what the Kodak snapshots really tell me. But there are images that I remember. One was the thresher machine, the giant harvester. Unlike the combines of today, it took 20 men to run them. And then at noon, everybody would go to my grandmother's house for lunch, which was unbelievable. I was only 4 or 5, but I remember it because they would bring out the mountains of food, and the guys still with the chaff of the wheat grains on their faces. They didn't even take time to wash up because they didn't want anybody to eat their food. And then when when the war ended, I came home. And we did time in Quantico and then the marine spots, Cherry Point, North Carolina, El Toro in California, where he was with various squadrons, 1st Marine Air Wing, 2nd, and on the front line of defense. He went to Korea and then back and retired in 56 after 20 years. So I'm a Marine, and I carry that identity with me. And then was able to go to the Middle Western School in Independence, Kansas, town of 10,000, and got all the benefits of a high school that wasn't too big, wasn't too small. And my addiction was not drugs. We hadn't even heard of drugs, but was football.
Okay.
And I was into it almost, as an addiction. And so, but anyway, didn't go anywhere. I was too small. But anyway, I'll stop there. That's kind of the early part of my life.
When did you figure out that you wanted to go into the media world? Do you remember a point in your life where you went, you know what, this could be a possible career path for me?
Yes, when I was 16, I went down to the state labor office and got a permit to work, and went to the local radio station, which was 250 watts, and began a couple years as my part-time job. And I did everything, and I was fortunate to have Nelson Rupard, who was the general manager, and was a kindly, highly experienced guy who liked to shape young men, who provided him with cheap labor. But I ran my own board and queued up my records and ripped the AP wire, came in and read the news, introduced the Okie preachers who came across the border from Oklahoma, bought time on Sunday morning, and they would just lean back and let God send them the message, and they would preach it. And then it proved to be, I knew a couple things then. I knew I had a deep voice. I found it very interesting, a hell of a lot better than pulling sodas down at the drugstore or working in the oil fields. But even then, I didn't quite focus in on my career path because it came so easy. I just sort of did it. And when you love something and have a talent for it, why, you don't stop and think, oh, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. Walter Cronkite was, starting up his half-hour newscast. And, of course, he was the big anchorman. So the one I sort of idolized, I became a hero. And then off to University of Kansas, where I worked part-time, got a degree in broadcasting, and then worked part-time at a top 40 radio station, K-Top Radio, and they changed my name to Tony Curtis, with a K if we may. Home of the Sonoramic Cruiser, number 101. Number one, we're also the home of J. Jasmo Bob, professor at the College of Knowledge. And I learned all that and went out of my mind. In 6 months, I left. I broke a contract because I could not take any more. Same time, I was commuting from 30 miles away at the university. And I would barely get there by my shift at 1 o'clock. And same time, same records. I was playing Elvis Presley with first, All Shook Up, and ultimately the iconic stuff. And I was playing him as the first time records.
Wow.
And then I just ran out of things to say. So I went across town all the time going to college, and got a job at the TV station, the only one in town, WIBW. And I was the announcer and weatherman for a couple of years. And that's my kind of the start in broadcasting. And even then, I didn't focus on and say to myself, oh, this is it. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. Because the disc jockey or even play-by-play, which I did football, Little League baseball, was so short-term to me.
So did you ever think of doing something else? Did something else ever present itself to you?
It's a good question. I don't think I did. I didn't want to go off and sweep out buildings, and because I was having enough success, and it gave me kind of an importance both at school and among friends. And I began to zero in when I went to the Marines in the Marine Reserve. I was there for 6 years. You have 6 months active duty, and you go off to Paris Island, then you come back, and I still had my job at the TV station, and that was the part-time job, and I was able to work my way through law school with that. My wife was a teacher, and we had a nice little life. And
I didn't know about the law school side of it, buddy.
The what?
I didn't know about the law school side of it.
Oh, really? Well,
Yeah.
I've been hiding that. That stopped here in a couple of years because I was struggling with, do I practice law or do I stay in broadcasting? Now, at the time of broadcasting, I graduated in 1966. It had not, Edward R. Murrow had just come back and with all his radio buddies, and he still ruled the roost at CBS and the media. And, CBS News was small, and they were covering the civil rights movement with a black and white film. And, their crew, nobody gave them any instruction. There was no manual on how to do it. You just put the camera on your shoulder and walk into the protests. And then you had the Vietnam War, and over why the crews went. But it was not organized, I guess, to the point where you say, well, I'll go work for Alcoa or McDonald's or something like that. This was coming together as a news network. So when I graduated, I accepted a job as a lawyer in Wichita, and went to Wichita. Hated it, so I came back. And when I was studying for the bar, I was still struggling with, well, I put 3 years in. This is the way the logic always goes. I might as well practice, see if I like it. Or, I'll just stay where I am at the TV station. And they made me a program director, and, but it was not that satisfying. I had I guess maybe, but a military family. I had the rambling. Wishes, you got to move. Mm-hmm. So I was. Have you heard the tornado story? Do you know that?
No, sir. No.
Oh boy, I've got a fresh group. So I am studying on a tax review class at the law school at Washburn, and in Topeka, the capital. 150,000 people, which was a big city in Kansas. But my friend, who was news director, said, I'm going to go on vacation. Can you come out and do the 6 o'clock for me? And, so I said, I'll be happy to leave the tax review class. And went out, and at 6 o'clock did the news. At 6:30, they said, why don't you stick around? We took weather very seriously.
Mm-hmm. Oh, in Kansas.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah. And why don't you stick around? We have some high winds coming in from Manhattan, 60 miles west. And we'll give you a word, alarm, then you can leave. So I stuck, and I was standing there. We didn't get any tornado. I guess we got an alert that there was a thunderstorm approaching, and it had possibility of some severe weather. But all of a sudden, literally, with a hot camera, I'm standing ready to go on with this alert. It was a CBS show on the air, Lost in Space, at 7 o'clock, very, very popular. And my general manager was right there, and he said, don't go in because everybody hates us, when we enter a program. And I hear a two-way radio. It was Ed Rutherford. He was a very ex-Air Force guy who was our shooter. He said, I'm at the southwest edge of the city. I see a big tornado. It's right now white. It's on the ground, and it's headed for the town. All of a sudden, your life changes. And I said to myself, and general manager said too, well, it's hold, and you got a confirmation. And the next one was, it came over, probably 6 miles away from the city limits. And it hit a Shetland pony farm. And 200 of the little horses were impaled on the fences.
Oh, my goodness.
And then it went on to blow apart a large luxury apartment, if they can be luxury, in Topeka, Kansas, and knocked it down. And so that was my confirmation. That was my absolute truth. So I went, got on camera and said, for God's sake, take cover, in a dramatic fashion. And it was, and lives were saved. And it was probably the most important lesson, because it was the beginning of 60 years in a career of broadcasting. And I never thought about practicing law or doing anything else, because I saw and experienced that the words of a broadcaster could save lives. I had to get them into the basement. I thought about crying. I thought about cussing. But I just got it out in a dramatic fashion. We were on the air 24 hours and became, everything was blown apart. It was an F5 even before they had ratings. And I think we had 17 dead, but most of the people escaped. And we were the only one on the air. 70% of the audience were watching Channel 13. We were 60 miles from Kansas City, and although they could get those numbers wide, we were the television station. And within 3 men, anyway, we stayed, and that was a turning point in my life. And I wrote to the law and said, I can't accept the office. And in 3 months, I had my wife, my 6-month-old baby. She carried the baby to the science building, got down in the basement, and they were hit full. I had wiped out the law school, 8 out of 10 sandstone buildings on the campus, and laid a highway right through town, about 12 miles, I think. And we were on the air all that time. But I suddenly saw the light and said, my God, God is showing me a way and saying, what do I have to do, stupid, to convince you to stay in broadcasting? So I was on the way to Chicago. I had sent my tape out. You guys would know what that is about. And I chose 5 TV stations around the country, and WBBM in Chicago, CBS, said, come on in. And at the time, I was one of the very few lawyer/reporters.
Perhaps the only one.
Yeah, probably the only one. There were 3, but they were covering the Supreme Court. And I said, I'd like to do that, but I'll start here. And in Chicago, this whole thing seems like it was laid out by the great broadcaster in the sky. The day I arrived, it was on my birthday in 1966 in September. They had just caught Richard Speck, the mass killer of 8 student nurses. And the town was suffering from PTSD, just scared to death. And it took a year to get the trial going, but who do they want covering the trial? Me. Of course, the only lawyer on the payroll. Yeah. And so I began a career. The next 4 years were probably the best 4 years that any rookie TV reporter, could have. First of all, I covered the Speck trial. Second, King was killed, and the cities were on fire. So I was there for that, and that was in spring of 1968. Then Bobby Kennedy was killed in L.A. Then the Democratic National Convention.
In Chicago.
Can you imagine? Comes up in a couple of months. I was on. First of all, Cronkite came in with the big network, and they took over the airwaves. So I was anchoring the 10 o'clock news at the time, but I was given the night off. So I go down right into the demonstrations. And the big one at Balboa in Michigan had 10,000 protesters gathered there, and the cops, stopping them from moving to the convention. Daley was Mayor Daley, very serious about not letting them riot through the town. They had done enough of that in 3 days leading up to this point. And so I climbed up on top of a car with some other guys from Time Magazine, and right in front of us was this police line. It was the line, that the demonstrators wanted to cross, but they weren't going to let them. And there was a point after about an hour of back and forth why the cops thought that the demonstrators were trying to push through. They gave the word to clear the intersection. And in 15 minutes, the now famous video of blue helmets going into the crowd and batons over their heads, smashing kids, lives in infamy in Chicago. But I saw it. I was witnessing history. And then the next year, about a year, there was a trial that became famous, the Conspiracy 7 trial. Aaron Sorkin, did his movie about it, covered that. And then CBS News sees me and hires me to go to L.A., where I covered the Charles Manson trial, for God's sake.
Wow.
And my fourth, I said, I covered 4 trials of the century in
Wow.
4 years.
So,
And,
law school came in handy, huh?
Yeah, it sure did. It
Absolutely.
sure did. I say it's almost like somebody was guiding me, like the big guy in the sky. And then Angela Davis. And then they brought me back to Chicago for 9 years as the local anchorman. But I loved traveling, and I did a lot of it from a local station. I broke the Agent Orange story as a local reporter. It just happened. And got to Vietnam in '75 when the North Vietnamese were coming down Highway 1, and Iran in 1980. And because we had ratings and it was a big station, why they let me kind of be a foreign correspondent of a local station because I wanted to be. And I would convince them that, hey, this would be ratings, and all that. I'll just wrap it up. And in '80, I went back to anchor with Diane Sawyer. Spent 3 years at the morning news, and I felt just like I did at KTOP, going out of my mind, getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I got out of here.
Oh,
Good
goodness.
Lord.
Yeah, so I went back to Chicago, started my own production company, Kurtis Productions. Wound up producing 500 documentaries.
Wow. That is incredible.
Well, and there you are. I won't bore you anymore.
No, buddy, that was the direct opposite of boring. Let me tell you that.
I am in awe.
Yeah.
I like talking to broadcasters because you would appreciate it.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. Yeah, that's beyond incredible. I don't even think I have the superlatives to break into that
Oh,
one.
yeah. And I have to tell you, you've done me a great service because my name is also Bill Kurtis. And when anybody tries to Google search my name, you give me so much cover because they have to go through 2-3 pages of you before they ever get to anything about me.
Serves you right.
Yes. Well, it's great. I can do anything.
You got to change your name.
Yeah. No. Embrace it, man. Bill Kurtis.
Yeah, so I got one last question for you, Bill, before,
Okay.
because I know you got things to do here this afternoon, too. Running your own production company now, after the legendary career you have, I'm sure you've had the unique ability to do what those early anchors you were saying, those early GMs did for you, bringing people in and kind of giving them the show of the giving them the idea of how everything works and how it goes. Somebody, let's say you got somebody new that's starting off as you did, that, you know, wants to go into this world. What is some advice you'd give them as somebody who's literally in that now at the top tier, like the best of the best, running your own production company? What's some advice you would give?
Well, I'll give you the advice that Michael Jordan, of all people, answered when I asked him that question. He said, first of all, assess your talents. Now, if you are burning to be, a point guard for the Chicago Bulls, you better think again, because you're not tall enough. But assess your talents and what you love. It's a little trite these days, love, and you'll never be unhappy. Well, but that's true. And then try and get in your career path as soon as you can. So here I was at 16, starting in the career or the vocation that I had for the rest of my life, 60 years. The earlier you can do that, why, the earlier you're going to shake loose the mistakes we all make, from Mike Fright, to saying the wrong words. And then go to work. I filled every possible airtime that I could and extra work, and study it and focus and be consistent. I had, and it goes back to actually not to the tornado, but to my general manager. And he had such a respect for what we do in broadcasting. He knew that the words we say are being heard by someone who can use them and may even save them. So I never sort of played around with that. April 1st comes and people, want to play a little practical. I never did. Well, ultimately, why it paid off. But you may be also asking about, well, we'll say, well, how do I get a deep voice like you? And the fact is, well, yeah, I'll tell you that. You don't need a deep voice, but you need a voice that you control. So if you get up in the morning, it's just like lifting weights. Read out loud. Nobody reads out loud unless they're working a morning shift and reading the news, or reading, the child's book to your baby. And you try it, and it's just something we don't do. Well, if you do that, just like before your push-ups, and it could be 5 minutes or 30 seconds, it becomes a consistent habit, and you learn to use your voice, and to the point where you don't need to think about how you're saying something when you're reading a commercial or reading the news. It will take, I'll tell you the other thing, image what you are reading. When you're talking about Gaza and maybe an Israeli bomb strike, or the wheat fields, and if you picture them in your mind, those pictures are driven or guided by what you are reading. Then the emotion on your face when you get on a television will be natural. You can't overdo it. And the interpretation that you give to the words you're reading will be correct, and just ultimately reach a point where it's just natural. Easy, yes. And then, you look at the tenor of your voice, and like I say, you don't have to have a deep voice, but you want one that's resonant, and that'll help, because you're dealing with a muscle. The vocal cords are muscles, and you have to work them out, and you can lose it. I'm 84, and I don't anchor as much. I do voiceover work now, narrations and things like that. But I have to kind of stay in shape.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. Bill, I just want to tell you how honored we are that you took the time to chat with us. This has been I've only shed a few tears in the middle of this because it's an emotional conversation. You have a incredible journey you've been on, and it's like you said, you've been very blessed, and just thank you so very much for taking the time to chat with us.
Well, thank you. One note: I have finished a memoir.
Okay.
And it's in September 21st, being published by the University of Kansas. The tornado story is in there, but I've got 27 others.
That is amazing.
Where will that be for sale, Bill?
I got all over, I hope. Hopefully, Rachel will be selling it on the street.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, what will it be titled?
Well, you may want to revisit this.
So what's the title of the book?
Whirlwind. The news career of Bill Kurtis, I think.
Yeah, with your permission, we'd love to have you back on when that comes back out, and we'll talk specifically about that too. But we'll of course mention that in the credits to the show and make sure it's getting out there. But yeah, that's wow. I think you already got 4 copies sold right here on set, Bill.
Well, thank you so much. Actually, I enjoyed it.
Yes, sir. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much, Bill.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, well, that was a legendary conversation.
Oh my goodness!
I knew he had a career, but man, that was.
He's had 5 careers worth of accomplishments.
Yeah, maybe more than that. Holy moly!
Yeah, he's lived several lifetimes.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't think we need to say anything else. I think
What could we say?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's end this thing then. So thank you all for tuning in to the EEARSS podcast produced here at Terrier TV. You can learn more about EEARSS over at EEARSS.org or .com or AlligatorRobb.com. Again, I'm not trying to over-confuse it, but Rob does have 2 B's. EEARSS has an extra E and an extra S. It is EEARSS. So learn more about the research we're doing, the things we're working on, and we'll catch you all next week. Bye-bye.